I shared the first day of my field trip to Joshua Tree National Park in California in part 1. Now let's talk about my second day at the park, hunting for Joshua trees. Before we talk about that second day though, let me recap what happened during day 1. I hiked, I took a lot of photos, but I didn't see any Joshua trees, so I needed to do some research. Once I got back to my hotel, I looked back through the website at some of the description of the hikes in the park, and I compared them to where the trails were located on the map. I figured that the Joshua trees must be in the northern area of the park, in the Colorado desert portion. So the next day, I grabbed my buddy Raymond, headed for the west entrance, and I was definitely rewarded. Even before we reached the entrance, I started seeing Joshua trees everywhere. I refrained from getting out and taking photos until I was inside the park, but my faith was restored that a place called Joshua Tree National Park probably does actually have Joshua trees in it. There is a visitor center called Joshua Tree at the west entrance. I saw that there is a little cafe where you can purchase food and drinks, but I took 0 photos because I was so excited to get into the park. So we drove down the main road and stopped at one of the first pullouts so I could get up close and personal with the Joshua trees. I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed by them. They really are neat. They're a type of yucca plant like the Mojave yucca I showed you in part 1, but they grow huge. They form this bark on the trunk, and they have these crooked and twisting limbs with the leaves that stick out like spikes. When the conditions are right during the spring, they even bloom like this, and I was lucky enough to see it. Now, when I say these are big, it's hard to get a scale of things from a photo, so check this out. This is Raymond taking a photo of one. Raymond is 6 feet tall. The tree is several times taller than him. And of course I wanted my photo taken with one. I stumbled upon this youngling as well that seemed tiny to me because we were among so many larger trees. But then I made Raymond stand next to it and realized that it's actually 6 feet tall. My plan was to drive the road from the west entrance to the south entrance. The road is pretty long. It's right around 50 miles, so it took quite a while to drive it, especially with the many stops that I made to check out the views and the plant life. There's a lot more going on in the northern section of the park than there is in the south. Lots of stops with little trails. There are a bunch of restrooms along the way too, which is nice. Not a lot of water though. You still definitely need to bring your own. Like I was during the first day of my field trip, I was struck by the groupings of like plants. There are what seemed like a bajillion Joshua trees around, varying in density as you drive. It's kind of amazing to see them stretching out ahead of you. As you continue down the road, you'll notice the Joshua trees thinning, and then you'll reach Cholla Garden, which is an area full of Cholla cactus. You can walk through them on a little trail, which is only a little unnerving since Cholla cactus are super easy to get stuck to you. It was also a really windy day, and I heard a woman worrying about the balls of spines blowing off the plant and into her. Then you travel through the desert for a while longer and come upon a place called Ocotillo Patch. There's no trail, but you can pull off and see a whole slew of Ocotillo plants. What I found interesting here is that when I saw Ocotillo the day before in the southern part of the park, it was luscious with green leaves all over and red blooms at the tops. But here, the plants had few leaves and no blooms. We continued down the road all the way back to where I had been the day before and out of the park at the southern end. All in all, I was pretty amazed by the park. The website talks about it being where 2 deserts meet and how there's so much to see and do, like hiking, photography, rock climbing, which I didn't experience during this field trip, but I hear that the rock climbing is amazing, and just plain being a tourist and enjoying the beauty of the desert. And they aren't kidding. There really is so much to see, and my hike was lovely, not to mention the photography. There is a lot to capture, and I found myself stopping every few steps for more photos. It's definitely a place I'd like to visit again. I think I would avoid the summer months because it does get quite hot, but I'd love to do some of the other hikes in the park and maybe catch sunset at Cholla Garden. You can see more of my field trip videos in the playlist above, and you can see my favorite photo from day 2 of my trip at snapchick.com. There's a link right to it in the description of this video. VIPs log in while you're there to see a behind-the-scenes video from day 2 of my trip. One more thing. Keep an eye on my Facebook page because I'll be sharing a black and white only gallery in the next week. It is Monochrome March after all. If you haven't liked my page on Facebook yet, you can find a link to it in the description below.